as someone that came through the college landscape and someone that's been quite successful, what would your advice be to a young player who's gonna have to make the decision of, okay, do I take the pro route or do I go to college? Like, what would your advice be for a young player like that?
I would tell them.
Yo, what is going on? And welcome to another episode of the Urban Pitch Podcast, the beautiful game of life, part of the Believe Network. I'm Ramsey Abushala, editor of urbanpitch.com. To my left, we got Julio Matarosa, executive director of Vibes for the second week going. Julio, what's going on, man?
Nothing much. We're actually recording this time, so it's amazing.
I know, yeah. Well, I mean, why do you got to throw me under the bus like that, bro? Come on, man. So, yeah, may or may not have forgot to hit the record button going on here, but Julio's taken on the full-time executive director of Vibes because Bridget Flores unfortunately is feeling a little bit under the weather. She's keeping the urban pitch tradition alive of getting sick after international travel. She had a little bit too much fun in Mexico. Yeah,
Too much of a party, too much tequila.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame her, but shout out to Bridge. Hope you feel better. But the show must go on. We got a very special guest joining us via Zoom. You may know him from the San Jose Earthquakes. He's one of MLS's most promising players, Jeremy Ebobisse. Thank you for joining the show. What's going on, man?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Like I was saying on the first round, it's that time of the year where people are starting to get sick. I caught a little bug earlier in the week, so just a shame that we don't have your full crew, but excited to connect. I've seen some of your work around.
Yeah, appreciate you, man. So how's the off season going? Because I know it's hard to get the full picture, with pro athletes in their off seasons. I know we see sometimes in the documentaries, the going into the lab at like 5 a.m. But I feel like that's PR. That's like kind of like shiny and polished, and I don't know how authentic that is. But what's the off season like for you? How's that been going?
Man, that's a loaded start. No, it's a fun question to go back on, because for me, like, I'll start with off season has been great, a little bit too long, which is a reflection of just us not fulfilling everything that we wanted to this season. But that fire that lights from just kind of being sat still for the last 6 to 8 and even more weeks is what's going to instill the drive to accomplish what we know we could have last year and maybe even go beyond that. So that's that. But then when you talk about kind of off season and how you're curating what you're doing to your followers and to your brand, I think, professional athletes show you and you see what they want you to see. So when I was young, I was very anti showing people that I'm training, because I'm like, there's no value in that. Like, I'm training for me, not for people to see that. And now as I've gotten older, I've come to respect, some of the people who go about that. Because they are also doing it when no one's watching, but there is a certain branding component that matches their authenticity as well. So, there's layers to what people do and show during the off season, but yeah, it's a good time to reflect on the year and to prepare for the following.
Yeah, I forget the philosopher, which philosopher said it, but I heard real G's move in silence.
Lil
right?
Wayne.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. That's what it was. Yeah.
Great
very
poet.
Esteemed poet and laureate and all that. But kind of go into that a little bit more. And obviously the season didn't end like how you guys wanted in San Jose, but what's like the overall goals for this offseason for you to make sure that next season starts off and continues for success?
Yeah, last season, early exit in the playoffs, in the play-in game or in the knockout game against Sporting Kansas City, who were the hottest team in MLS. I think we put ourselves in a tough situation by not necessarily taking care of business in those that final stretch. And the offseason has kind of been a moment of reflection. You can't take away the fact that this is a Quakes team that didn't finish in the playoff positions the year before, that has had a lot of changes and momentum shifts over the years. So want to acknowledge the body of work over a 35 game season that was net positive, even if it wasn't to the fullest of our expectations. And, now that I've had time to reflect, some of our teammates have as well, it's understanding our game model even more, understanding how pieces have just moved on, pieces are going to be added in, how we can all kind of incorporate into that, and then hit the ground running in January. So
Today's episode is brought to you by Bet Online. All the major sports are in action this week with the college football playoffs ready to kick off. Bet Online is your #1 destination for all your sports wagering info, including news for pro football, the NBA, upcoming fights, and NHL games this season. Head to the website today to get into the action and see all the updated odds for the week. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts.
Getting that little break, 2-3 week break, depending on who you are and what kind of obligations you might have, and then kind of reintroducing yourself to different phases of reentry fitness and maintenance and opportunities for improvement as well from a physical and technical standpoint, so that by the time you're hitting week 1, week 2 in January, you're flying, and hopefully, the team is able to take over from there in a group setting. So that's really what the off season's like from an on-field perspective. But the off season is such a unique moment in time that if you're only focusing on field, then I think you're putting your upcoming season in a little bit of a perilous situation, because you're going to be left wanting more.
Just circle back on the training. You see other sports like NBA or football, other players train with people from opposing team. Is it like that in the MLS as well? Are you practicing with players from different teams?
Yeah, I think everyone's different, but for me, I'll take that chance any day of the week, because you have to remember that although we're on opposing teams today, we grew up playing with and against each other. Some of us since we were 9, and we've met along the journey, through ODP, which I get it makes me sound like a dinosaur these days. Right. But through ODP, through the collegiate system, through academy, like, we've created community over the years, and you're not just going to forget that because your competitors, 9 months out of the year. So when I'm in the DMV, I definitely, which is where I call home, I definitely try to get out there and compete with the best that I can find. Hopefully learn something off them, exploit some weaknesses, and attack the season the following year.
Yeah. Talk about growing up in the DMV. Obviously, coming from France at a young age, and what was it like growing up there, and at what age did you fall in love with the sport? How did you fall in love with the sport, and what was it like playing soccer growing up in Maryland?
Yeah, growing up in the DMV is unique. I think it's the most international metropolitan area in the country, which is saying something, because we have some very diverse metropolitan areas, on the East Coast, West Coast, just off the top of my head, New York, Bay Area, LA, any of the southern cities as well. But I think being able to resettle from France at such a young age, but having Cameroonian and Malagasy parents really provided me with a unique perspective, kind of navigating that space. French was my first language. I was able to pick up English at a young age through preschool, but it just created a very different path for me as a kid. And soccer was kind of that, what I hoped would become a unifying community for me, just bringing together the best and brightest and just those who wanted to have fun using our beautiful game. I just navigated so many different soccer clubs, leagues, trajectories, and that was due to my brother first and foremost, who's 6 years older than me, playing the game, who got it from my dad, no less, and also my family being in France when France won the World Cup in 1998, and just what that did to reverberate around our household and the country as well, and what we would bring to the U.S.
Name the style of soccer that's played in the DMV, because I know they have a rich community, got a rich African-American culture community, a big immigrant community. I'm Salvadorian. I know they have the second most Salvadoran people are in the DMV. So how is it growing up playing soccer there? The style of soccer, was it gritty? How was it growing up?
The style of soccer was different every game you played, everywhere you played. But I think having so many international communities put a really strong emphasis on technical ability first and foremost, and creativity. It wasn't so structured where, we were talking about an outside back tucking in at 9 years old, or even at 11 or 12 years old. there was a lot of free flowing football. It was extremely physical. We had guys who took pride in their challenges and took pride in not getting beat. And those were guys from every culture, right? And I think what it made you do is it made you adapt. And it made you adapt and grow and pick different parts of different people's games and try and mold that into your own. So I'm super grateful that I grew up in the DMV. When I was able to kind of get out of the DMV, that's when I started to see some of the differences, maybe some of the more physically built teams from different regions of the country. Where I found the most similar style of play was frankly when I would play California teams and the way they pass and moved and, went at you 1v1 with a degree of flair that, I didn't always get in other regions of the country. I think Texas had a lot of that as well, but that's the best way to get the best version of yourself within the game. It's to challenge yourself against guys from different cultures, and that's what we're able to do where we're from.
Yeah, and I think especially you mentioned California and Texas, and those are some of the more well-known when it comes to producing soccer players. But
Vegas as well, slowly coming up.
Vegas. But the DMV also has, across the board, in all sports, I feel like maybe gets a little bit overlooked. Do you feel that as well, being from there?
That the DMV gets overlooked from a sporting perspective?
Yeah.
I think from a soccer perspective, I thought it was a little bit overlooked. We had incredible teams. I mean, again, going back to before MLS Next and even before Development Academy, we had Bethesda, we had Baltimore Bays, we had DC United. We had some Northern Virginia teams in Annandale and Arlington. So we had, some really prominent clubs all within a 30-minute radius of each other. And yet I felt like people didn't consider us relevant. Even in Region 1, people thought New York was the place or Eastern Penn. And whatever, that was just something that I took on. But from a sporting perspective in the DMV, I felt like we were well represented. People understood what kind of an athlete could come out of our area, from especially in basketball and football. And the older I got, the more I got to know that, because I wasn't super connected to other sports in the area until maybe I got to college and started to see where some of these stars came from as well.
Yeah, and you got a chance to train a little bit in Fulham as well. What was that like?
I did, yeah. So when I was 15, one of my club coaches at the time, who is British, set me up with a training stint at Fulham, and he was really downplaying it. He was just like, yeah, just go over there, have the experience, it'll be a great time. And I was like, sure, why not? I ended up going. It was life changing in the way that it opened my eyes to what the expectations were to get to the next level. I mean, it was demanding at what I thought was such a young age, right? 14, 15, 16. I think, I'm in middle school, maybe high school. Why would I see this as anything other than a game? But now these guys had given up school. These guys were being pressed for professional contracts from their family and their network down to the club who had already invested in them. So that just yielded a much faster game, both technically, tactically, much more accountability at a young age. And it was just again, a life-changing experience. I had a good one from a sporting perspective. They wanted me to stay, but from a visa standpoint in the UK, it's pretty tough, especially at a young age. So didn't work out, but it reminded me, or it showed me that I had potential in the game, and I wanted to take it as far as I could.
That rule's kind of weird, right? You got to have so many games with your national team before you can get that visa?
Yeah, it's changing. I think it's changing now with some of the political decisions that the UK has taken over the years. But at the time, I think it was 75% of the national team games with the senior team guarantees you a work permit, which at 16 and at the time, not even an American, I had no trajectory to reaching.
Yeah. And so you mentioned the kind of hunger that the players are playing with and the expectations that were put on them. That was something out of your expectations and something that was kind of a shock to you. Was there anything else, like from a training perspective, in terms of like what they were doing that might have been different from what you were used to in the U.S. Or like what were some of the other things that were different that stood out to you when you were training out there?
I think honestly, from a game model perspective, it was similar to what I'd been working with in the US, just probably enhanced a little bit, uh, slightly more advanced. The biggest difference was the quality of player and their attentiveness to detail. In the US, where I was playing at the time, you could get away with just being an athlete, for example, and having the bare minimum of technical skills, and a coach could find a role for you within that team. The threshold of minimum technical skill there was night and day. And so that shows up in the way people dribble. I'm not talking about like flair and step overs and all that, but can you dribble at speed through traffic? Can you pass under pressure? Can you break lines? Can you hit long balls under pressure? Like the automatic nature with which some of these guys could execute those at such a young age, playing against, I played against Wolves, I played against Chelsea, I played against some good academies while I was there, and for them to do that consistently was a huge eye opener as well. And the intensity from the coaches, from the players with each other, I think that was something that I took away too. A lot of cursing at a young age, a lot of vulgar commentary, but ultimately you have to remember that these guys are on the same team, but they're competing with each other for the same spots. Like from U16s to U18s, you're probably only taking 3 to 6 guys sometimes, which it's tough. Like, how do you balance making someone look good, but also not knowing if you're making them look too good that they're going to take that spot that's available.
Right.
It's a tough mentality for young guys to have to adapt to.
Mm-hmm. And when you came back to the States after that, did you apply that kind of like cutthroat competition to your opposition when you arrived back in the States?
Yeah, I mean, especially at the beginning, I tried to share my experience with my teammates as much as possible. Like with any experience, it's very stark when you experience it, and each day that happens, it wanes and wanes, whether you want it to or not. And I certainly did not want it to. Thankfully, I had another teammate who had gone through a similar experience both at Fulham and at Arsenal at the same time. So we could come back and try and elevate the standard of our team. But frankly, our coach also had a good pulse of our team and keeping us on track to achieve whatever our ceilings could and would be under his stewardship. So we were vessels for some of that leadership, but ultimately he had a good pulse on how to get us to the best version of ourselves.
Yeah, you just came back cursing out everybody if they gave you a bad pass or something like that.
There were a lot of offs.
Hey, that is me right now. I've been trying to play pickup with my friends Sunday leagues, and I'm cursing at everybody for no reason. Like, it's probably because I can't move like I used to. Like the highest level I played was college soccer, so I can't move. So when they give me a pass and I look bad, I get mad at them.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about doing that in Sunday league, but this happens at the professional level all the time too. If it comes back to communication, but if you're on the wrong page, sometimes you don't want to look inward, especially in the heat of the moment. So it happens. We deal with it and we move.
At the Five Aside podcast, you said a story when you went to go play with Wolves. You got a little cocky because you were scoring, so you tried to take a player on 1-on-1, and hey, after the game they cursed you out.
So they cursed me out in the moment, and then after the game, the coach told me off, and it was all fair.
Yeah.
Like, I was trying to maintain eye contact, or maintain focus, and not look embarrassed. But in my head, I was like, yeah, you have that coming for you. I mean, look, we all grow through these types of moments, and there's no shame in it. It's just the guy that repeats the same mistake every single day,
right,
that we should be worried about.
Yeah. Have you been on now as like a seasoned pro? Have you been on the giving end of the chewing out to a young kid who's trying to do a little too much?
It's a good question. So I'll take it back to as a rookie, what was most helpful to me. I came into the league as somewhat of a crafty player who, was able to dribble through whoever, whenever, wherever in order to create shots, assists, goals, chances for myself and for others. And there was always going to be an adjustment period that needed to be made in order to just play with the better players that I was stepping into a locker room with. There were times in which I tried to overcorrect because of feedback I was getting, where I was like, okay, get the ball and get rid of it as quickly as possible and then get to the next space. And I think that was extremely necessary for me to understand both my movements and other people's movements, as well as just being efficient with my space in order to get back in front of goal. But then there were other times where that hurt my ability to put the team in a good situation because I might get rid of the ball too early. And I think nowadays what we're seeing with a lot of these different, styles of play, I think of a Brighton or even Crew that just won the championship. Like some of what they do is waiting for pressure to come before actually activating whatever pattern of play they're going for. Because sometimes if you move the ball too quickly, then the defense is set and is not moving in accordance to what you're doing. So understanding that experience, I try to find a balance with some of these younger players today. I'm like, yeah, go continue to develop the creativity, some of the beautiful things that has gotten you to this level, but also know when you definitely should not be doing those things. And if you have to learn on the fly and make a couple of mistakes to do it, then so be it. But try to keep the vulgarities to a minimal. That doesn't mean I won't get on some of them in very stern ways, but I take a lot of pride in the young guys and making sure that they fulfill their potentials wherever that is, because I had really good veterans in my locker room from all over the world who wanted me to do the same.
Hey man, you're just stopping the vicious cycle and making it a more constructive and better environment for the young kids, because you know how it felt, right?
No, I don't think so, because people are going to revert back to wherever they were. And again, I've had experiences where it was very aggressive, very tense. I don't think a few times it crossed lines, but apologies were made and it was all good. And that's what happens within the locker room, on the field. Tensions happen. And if tensions aren't there, then you're not, I would argue you're not on the edge of trying to be as competitive as you can be. But I go back to just having great veterans in my locker room as a rookie, as a young player. And yeah, they could get on me, but I knew it was from a place of wanting me to get better and wanting me to be able to help the team in a more effective way.
Yeah. And building on that kind of rookie experience and making the transition and going pro, the MLS draft is coming up, and there's been a lot of talk about, whether I don't know if there's been a lot of talk. I just saw something on Twitter the other day about the college route versus taking the pro contracts early on in your career, and the risks that each one has. Obviously, with MLS Next Pro, the pathway to the league is kind of changing, and the academy systems and all that has been kind of shifting over the last few years. But as someone that came through the college landscape and someone that's been quite successful, what would your advice be to a young player who's gonna have to make the decision of, okay, do I take the pro route or do I go to college? Like, what would your advice be for a young player like that?
I would tell them that every player is so different, and every route to the professional game is, very different, can't be replicated just because your best friend did it or your older sibling did it. And what works for someone else might not work for you. It's true for people on my teams growing up. I've seen everything from guys who have been picked up by European academies at 14 years old all the way to guys who have gone to open tryouts after 4-year college careers and managed to figure out team situations from there. So it's all different. I think that what's most important is that you have an opportunity to fight for significant minutes. You don't want to spend ages 16 to 22 in a position where you have no chance of playing. And that's not to say run from a fight, but also understand the balance of staying for the fight and knowing that you have a small window to develop. There are so many different pathways today. Whereas for me, it was basically go to college and figure it out from there. You had a few homegrowns, but not as many.
Right.
Today, you have MLS Next Pro. You can sign directly in USL Championship
Right.
and compete with men at 17, 18. Or you can just sign a homegrown deal, and if you're ready, they'll throw you right in. And college is still, a good option for maybe a player who's not ready to be a professional right away. It can still be a very formative 1 to 3 years or 4 seasons.
Yeah, yeah. And what was that like for you making that? Because obviously Duke is a storied program, and they have a lot of history. But what was that transition like from you going from Duke to the USL with Charleston and then to Portland?
I think at Duke, you're in a locker room of people that are not singularly focused on soccer. And that shows up in so many different ways. You have Duke is Duke for the fact that it brings the most well-rounded students from all over the world into its vibrant campus and tries to maximize what everyone brings to the community in order to create something even greater. When you're talking about a singular focus of being a professional and winning championships, that can sometimes conflict with taking part in everything else that Duke has to offer. So with that, it was a very fun environment to be in. The guys were great. The locker room was great. At that time, we weren't particularly at our most competitive. We had talent. We couldn't quite figure it out on the field. And so when I left Duke and went to Charleston Battery, it was the first time since that trial at Fulham where I really realized these guys are playing for something bigger than, just being next to their buddies and trying to make memories and, see where it took us or see where it takes them.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I always knew that could be a possibility for me. So I had this different mindset when I was in those circles. I made some sacrifices socially and maybe beyond in order to try and stay on that track. But it didn't prepare me for what I would find at Charleston and some of the veterans who, again, would get pretty hard on me based on some prima donna attitudes they might have felt I had, or maybe some of the deficiencies that I might have been showing at a particular moment. But that would really prepare me for Portland. So grateful for how that trajectory has transpired.
And how was it your time in Portland? Portland, one of the most decorated franchises in the MLS. They always looking to fight for a championship. You made it to the final with them. How was it?
Yeah, my time in Portland, overall, was great. I made some of my best friends playing for Portland, riding the highs and lows of being a professional athlete when you're not even starting for the reserve team, and when you're starting in an MLS Cup within 6 months and winning the bubble, but also experiencing being stuck in the bubble for 6 weeks, I think it might have been. So it was a whirlwind. I think speaking specifically to 2018, that 2018 had both the lowest low of my professional career at the time and the highest high. In that summer 2018, I wasn't starting for the second team. I felt like I was on the outs in Portland. I felt like there wasn't a plan or belief in me, and I wasn't able to show myself to the extent that I would have wanted to show. And so naturally, you just start going through all the thoughts in your mind, like, am I cut out for this? Can I do it here? All sorts of negative thought processes, which, I've had to address through sports psychology and figure out how to manage. But again, 6 months, not even 4 months later, I was starting an MLS Cup in front of 70,000 plus in Atlanta. A storied team on the other side. We had played Disruptor for the previous rounds in Kansas City and Seattle and Dallas on the road. So we felt like we could steal one more. We had a talented team, very experienced. Our spine had won MLS Cup in 2015, but they were strong. They were strong, and in the pain of the defeat grew, an ambition to hopefully get back there one day, and also to know just what the standard is. Portland is a team that competed for championships. Before I came, we went back in 2018. We won the West regular season in 2017, semifinal Open Cup in 2019, bubble champions in 2020. They got back to MLS Cup after I got traded in 2021. So the demands for excellence there are things that, I'm trying to instill in San Jose, as I know other people are here as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of the experienced players, like Diego Valeri is someone that obviously stands out. He penned, I don't know if you saw, he penned like a really nice letter to Darlington Nagbe ahead of the MLS Cup final, and I mean, obviously highlighting Darlington's teammate, like his values as a teammate and as a player, but to me it really showed his passion for the game and his love for the game. I'm talking about Diego. What was it like playing with someone like that who clearly exuded just such a love for soccer?
Yeah, I'll talk about both of them because they're both special players and people who I've gotten the opportunity to share time with. I think in Diego, you have what you see in that letter and what you take away in terms of his passion and the thought process that goes into the game. Like that's what shows up on a daily basis. He is extremely meticulous and detail oriented and passionate about what he brings to the team, but also how he can make the team better via different relationships or different tactics or styles of play. And as a young striker coming in and really witnessing, I didn't play a huge part in his MVP season in 2017, but I was able to witness it up close. That created a different level of understanding that I would need to have if I was going to play with someone like him. It was no longer, but I thought quickly. I thought that, I was one step ahead, but soon I realized that he was 2 steps and 3 steps ahead. And really, you want to be ahead of the person that you're playing with so that you can facilitate their jobs. And eventually we got into a pretty good relationship where when I was a striker, he was the 10. I felt like we had a good understanding of space, how to get the most out of each other, even if it was by using a third party, like using a winger and outside back to get the final, connection point. I felt like my understanding of the game grew a lot playing next to him. And then to Nag, because obviously what he's done and what he's been able to accomplish most recently in that 4th MLS Cup. I look back and I wonder what would have been in Portland had we kept Nagbe after 2017. I'd seen the highlight reel goals growing up. So for him to be in the locker room that I first stepped into, for Diego to be in the locker room that I first stepped into, Adi as well. I mean, these guys were guys that, I respected deeply. And, back to Nagbe, it really showed that beyond the player, beyond the skill and the poise, was a person that looked out for guys in the locker room in his own, sometimes seemingly nonchalant, but also very intentional way. Like one story that I haven't shared, but it was after my second start in Portland, and I'd had a tough game, and I'd put a lot of pressure on myself going into that game, knowing the opportunity was there to win a starting spot for the rest of the year, or at least compete for that starting spot. And where there were other guys in the locker room or around the team that acknowledged the challenging evening in their subtle ways. Like D was one of those guys who went out of his way to really have a conversation about the game and make sure that I knew that I didn't struggle because I was unable to play at that level, and really just allowed me to contextualize the game in a different way, that this is what happens at different times. Like we were all struggling for X, Y, and Z reasons. You need to be able to separate yourself from what you think happened. And I'm kind of glossing over the specifics, but that's the kind of leadership and the understanding of like what a young person might need at that time in order to stay on the right path. So, the player, everyone sees the player, but I think the person is as important to highlight. And it's awesome to see him continue to shine. I just wish he hadn't taken one away from us in 2018, but yeah, that's how the game goes sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, coming into a locker room like that, like it's a pretty ideal situation with such great vets like that. I mean, I won't name names in the MLS, but like you could have gone into like a dysfunctional situation, like in the NBA, for instance. Like they talk about like the old Washington Wizards, where it was just like kind of the Wild West out there, where everybody was just kind of doing their own thing.
Respect my Wizards, man.
Yeah.
actually, they're moving out of DC. So
I saw that they're moving like to the suburbs, right? In Virginia.
I don't know if it's really the suburbs, but they're moving across the river.
Yeah.
Conflicting thoughts. I'll have to digest that a little bit.
Yeah, but I completely didn't connect that. The Wizards were
The Gilbert Arena Wizards.
Yeah. Where I mean, the stories are like they're all out there for another podcast. But now, like, you're still young, but you have that experience now where you're kind of looked at as someone who's been in the league for a few years now, as the I won't say like let's say like a veteran, as a veteran player now. What lessons have you taken from some of the guys that you came up with, and specifically have you had to kind of use those lessons with any young players in San Jose?
Yeah, I think one of the most important lessons goes to staying in the moment and not getting so far ahead of yourself, but also not holding yourself back from expressing who you are and can be, especially as social media continues to, be so pervasive in every part of our game. It's so easy to get caught up and think that you're better than who you are, that you've accomplished more than what you've actually done. And when I look at myself as a young player, I was part of that trend. I think we were kind of in a Twitter and Instagram period before. I mean, there was Vine maybe, but that was really a sports platform to like amplify yourself and boost your ego. But I was a part of that generation where we just started to use it for branding purposes and sporting purposes. And I was feeding into all the compliments that were coming my way when I was hot. And then when I was going through a bad patch, I was feeding into all the negatives and all the hate and frankly undue criticism that was coming from everywhere and anywhere and everywhere. And I really absorbed that toll in a negative way, and it impacted me for a few months in my rookie season at the beginning. And I tried my hardest to share that with some of the young players today. Like, have your moments, enjoy them, but keep it all in a context that you're not where you want to be. And the only way you're going to get there is by being humble enough to keep going without thinking that you're already there. And then also, once you build up that kind of mental resilience and I would say just understanding of the process, I think it makes you a little bit more resilient to some of the commentary that comes from outside. The only people's commentary that should matter to you are one that comes from within and the ones that come from people who are so close to you that see you on a daily basis and want to help you get better. Because that's when you know that the criticism is going to be to send you to the right place.
Yeah. Don't read the comments. Don't read we learned that one pretty fast. Oh, yeah. We learned that one pretty fast too.
The comments are tough, but they're a part of life,
Yeah.
If you're gonna be a public figure, if you're gonna have a podcast, or I'm gonna play a professional sport, people are gonna see what you do, think that maybe they could do it better, or that they've seen how to do it better and understand it in a way that you don't. Trust me, I've watched film. I look at there was a phase in my career where I looked at every bad touch that I had in the game and just like rewinded and was so frustrated with myself, and it was toxic and unhealthy, and I did not get better for it. But we know what's out there. There's no point in reading it and continuing the negative cycle. Just finding a way to be constructive is super important.
Yeah, we were doing that with Julio. Every time he messed up, we were running back the film and kind of pointing out,
I'm not coachable. I'm not coachable.
Yeah.
I blamed everybody else. Like, hey, you should have just said it better. I probably would have reacted better. So I'm just not coachable. I'm not a coachable person. Not a great locker room guy. I think I'm better than my co-host. So I just have that. That's my problem, but I know it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But one thing I wanted to talk about was your now being in San Jose and some of the stuff that you've done in the community and embracing the community in the Bay Area. I know you talked about it with the Five-A-Side guys a little bit, but from an outside perspective and just seeing like how tapped in you were with the community, to me, I thought you were from the Bay, just from like seeing how how much you were doing, like the stuff you were doing, like with Neighborhood Sports Club and then I looked it up and I saw you from Maryland. So I was like, it's crazy that in a relatively short amount of time, you've done so much to connect with the community in the Bay Area since your move to San Jose. What has that been like for you, and how important has it been to just kind of form a place for yourself in the community?
It's super important for me to get to know every community that I play in. I think the only one where I really didn't make enough of an effort and frankly didn't know to do so was Charleston. But at Duke, in Portland, in San Jose, they've been, big priorities, or other people have made them priorities that I've been able to lean on. When you look at successful teams, they come from a community of people that trust each other, that like each other usually. It's not a requirement. I know like that's a popular topic, but if you like each other and you trust each other and there's a sense of togetherness, then when you're tested in battle in a game, that's going to show. And imagine if, instead of it being 11 players on this field, plus the bench and the guys who didn't make the squad and the coaching staff, you also were able to create that same level of bond with the 12 to 20,000 people that were in the stands. Obviously, it's not possible to do that to the same extent of what you do with the guys that you see every single day, 5-6 hours a day. But every step that you can take to accomplish that off the field, I think shows up on game day as well. Then the fans have an added level of respect for what you're doing, understanding that you care about the city and putting on for the city and bringing honor to the city. You're not just someone who's going to come in, extract everything of value that you can, and then leave. I think that when you start to have players like that, or people that aren't bought into the culture, then you start to maybe create a fragment between the club and the supporters and the city at large. So I think it's just important to build a community as big, but also as tight-knit of a community, from a personality standpoint and meshing. And that's what I've done through nonprofit efforts, through meet and greets hosted by the team, just being out and about and someone saying hi and connecting and recognizing me from being out on the field. It extends beyond San Jose. I'm fortunate that I've been able to call this city home for the last 2.5 years, but same goes for Portland, same goes for DC. And every time I leave a city, it's not because, or it's not that I'm done with them and I'll never think about them. I'm always thinking about how to impact places that I've already left and what that looks like.
Yeah. What was your first game back in Portland like? Because obviously, Providence Park is known for having a very, raucous atmosphere. Did you feel the love back from the fans your first time back?
Yeah, I felt love from the fans. Portland fans have always welcomed me with open arms, and it's weird to be back there playing against them, but I have a lot of respect for them.
Yeah. So now moving into next season, what are some of the goals that you have for yourself and as a team for the 2024 year?
I look at 2024 as an opportunity to combine the best that we had in 2022 with the best of 2023, because I think that we scored in certain ways and with certain consistency in 2022 that was maybe predicated off of some different open levels of openness to some of our games and some things that we maybe don't want to replicate as often. But I also think that if we can add that to what we did in 2023, which was score in a lot of games, but I think towards the end we might have missed out on some production from various areas. Then ultimately we can have a team that's performing at the top of the West, in my opinion. And the goal is team first. Like, we don't have time for individuals to chase goals, assists, clean sheets, whatever it is, for their own purposes. We have to all figure out, with new guys coming in, with guys having left, who can factor in where and how we can go beyond what we did in 2023. Because I think that, again, the ceiling for this locker room is, top 3 finish in the West in the regular season. And then what we know is that in the playoffs, anything goes. I was a 5 seed out of 6, I think, or no, maybe 6 seed when we went to MLS Cup in 2018. So anything goes once you're in.
Yeah, it's the hottest team in the playoffs, right? It's not necessarily the best one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you think the team needs for you to be that number 1 elite level? Or are you guys there just need to put it together?
I think we're going to need to show there were glimpses in 2023. I think our first 10 to 12 games were, a real barometer of where we should want to be. We had some big wins, beat LAFC at home, beat Union at home, and then, like, even beyond that, beat Seattle at home. So, some statement wins for sure that were part of a phase of the year where we were consistently winning at home, fighting and competitive on the road. And I think we just have to maintain that energy throughout the course of a 10-month season. Yes, there's momentum shifts in MLS, but we're more than capable with our talent, with our experience, and with the youthful and fresh energy that we have coming through the academy, as well as the collegiate system, to really mount a challenge. I also want to make a run in Leagues Cup. We're dealt a tough group in Tigres and the Timbers, but we were too competitive in that group to come away as the one team not to have gone through. So we'll sit in preseason, reassess, our team's values if that's necessary, or just reassess what we want to commit to each other in order to achieve those goals. But I have no doubt that we can achieve what we want when we have time to spend together and build off of last year.
Yeah. One final thing. You're a striker. You've scored a lot of goals. I think I'd have to go back and double check, but I think you might have the highest goal total out of anyone that we've had on the show. We've had a lot of defensive players. Like I'm trying to think of the MLS guys. I mean, Kellen,
Moose.
Yeah, Musovski, but he was an offensive guy, but he didn't really get a lot of consistent playing time. DeJuan Jones is more of a wing back, but I'm pretty sure it's you.
Or Kalen.
Yeah, Kellen. Yeah, but he's again like kind of a more defensive mid. But so what is your favorite goal that you've scored, or at least one that kind of sticks in your memory?
Favorite goal in terms of where it was in the season and the importance of the goal, I would say was my goal in 2018 against Seattle Sounders at home for the Timbers. We were in the Western Conference semifinal, having played a few days before in Dallas, and they had just scored on us, which obviously is not a good thing to concede at home in a 2-leg series. And it was we had picked the ball up, and like in a 2 to 3 pass sequence, I think between Chara and Valeri, I'd been sprung through on goal and was able to just dink it over an onrushing, Seattle goalie. And that was as loud as I'd heard Seattle or the Providence Park at the time. It was also just a huge momentum shift because they were able to kind of quiet us down for a couple of minutes. And then we got that goal, and then Blanco scored again right after that, and we ended up seeing out that game 2-1, which gave us an important, not cushion, but an important positive trajectory going into what ended up being a really hard away game there that we ended up sealing the series for. And then favorite goal on technical basis, but just at an irrelevant time, I would say I had a right-footed shot from outside the 18 in Dallas in 2022. That's just nice to remind folks that I can also use my right
Still
foot.
got it.
Just to let y'all know. Just to let y'all know.
Oh man, Jeremy, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you got a busy schedule, and just taking the time to speak with us, it really means a lot. So we're gonna be watching. We're in LA, so anytime you're out here, we'll for sure be sure to come out to the match, and we'd love to have you in studio if possible. Coming up, but.
Definitely. I actually did want to touch on just like one last thing.
Yeah,
definitely.
Because I think that it was like it was cool to kind of break down some of those career moments the way we did. But I also definitely wanted to talk about some of the nonprofit stuff that.
Oh, for sure.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Go ahead.
Just like really kick on these last, few weeks. There's this so I started the King Jabo Foundation in order to really allow myself to raise funds from the various communities that I've been a part of. And I always talk about how important community is to each location that, I start to build in, whether it's DC, Durham, Charleston, Portland, and now the Bay Area. And so having this foundation put together for me allows me to raise funds from people that have gotten to know me over the years who want to support the causes that I support and dedicate them to projects alongside partners that can help me execute in that vision. Because I really don't believe in reinventing the wheel. I believe in teamwork and highlighting the various capacities in which people can make impact. And so most recently, that's led to Over Under Initiative and King Jabo Foundation partnering up on a goal system that basically goes underground. And you can kind of pull it up when you want to play. And they're placed underneath basketball hoops. So it's a super innovative way to just put soccer infrastructure anywhere you have concrete across this country. But for me, my role in that is focusing on getting that into public parks and or schools. So I'm super happy to be fundraising for H.D. Cook Elementary School in Washington, D.C., which, is a school in Adams Morgan, not too far away from where I grew up, about 25 minutes away from where I grew up. And what's unique about this project is that it's also going to be used by DC Scores, which is a great nonprofit that does poetry and soccer for, kids of many ages, but in this specific elementary school, one of their flagship schools, it's going to be great for it to slot in so seamlessly. So, I'll be remiss if I didn't give that a little plug. Be awesome for, your followers, my followers to support that project. And, I can't wait to show what it looks like when it comes to life, because this is not only going to change these kids' lives and allow them to enjoy our sport in such a unique way, but I also think that, every school, every public park in this country, funds pending, should have one of these systems so that we're not relying on kids to have to source pub goals or rely on them putting shoes 10 yards apart and, doing whatever it takes to play the game. Soccer infrastructure should be as ubiquitous as basketball infrastructure, as American football, as a baseball backstop, and imagine what our country's talent pool will look like if we have kids playing soccer at the rate that we have kids playing kickball, at the rate that we have kids playing baseball for fun, and basketball and football. So, it's all part of a journey, but I'm looking forward to seeing where that takes it.
Yeah, we'll link all that in the description, in the show notes, and all that, so everybody can check that out and go support. But I had that listed. I was looking at the time. I didn't want to keep you for too long. So I'm glad that you brought that up because that's obviously very important, and the stuff that the Over Under Initiative, like Con Martino and his team are doing is amazing, and some of the parks that they've been able to set up in, it just looks like it's been a rousing success. So just wanna thank you for coming on and taking the time to spread that message and do all the work that you've been doing across the country. It really is super impressive. But again, thank you so much, Jeremy, and we'll be keeping up with you and everything that you're doing both on and off the pitch.
No, appreciate you guys' time, and again, keep growing. It's nice to see so many young podcasts kind of finding their own lanes within the sport. It makes it more fun for us to play in it, and it makes it more fun for people at home to watch it. So thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, appreciate you always. For Jeremy Ebobisse, Julio Monterosa, I'm Ramsey Aboushal. This has been the Urban Pitch Podcast, the beautiful game of life. We got more stuff coming in the next few weeks, so keep it tapped in. But until then, we'll see y'all next time.